Friends, welcome to the webinar on Indian food systems, distributive justice in access to natural resources and food. It is in the context of UN Food System Summit, which is planning to have in this year in October. It is in that context, in order to voice the unheard voices of the farming community and the hungry people. There is a global people's summit has been prepared, a kind of group of people, CSOs who have been working on the food rights have come together and then preparing themselves for giving a response to this corporate-led UN Food System Summit. Why I said corporate-led is we all know that how corporate-led agriculture has created devastations in our lives for in 4, 5, 6, 7 decades. And we don't want one more time systematically bringing the profit-driven, corporate-led So I was trying to say that we are with the second time it is coming up in a more systematic way, bringing the corporates together. UN Food System Summit is coming up with a very clear plan to take away whatever the meager resources are there with us as a farming community or the people systems that are there in operation with all the governments to secure the food for the people. And it is in this time, it is our basic right to come together and demand the governments, particularly our own governments, and also the UN system to listen to the voices of the people and then stop the corporate-driven systems that they are trying to force on us. So I don't want to talk much on this because you have a very good panelists who are going to talk. The first, we will have a keynote address speaker, Vandana Siva. She will talk, and after that, Arnold from PAN-AP, because Sarojini Rangam has not able to join, so he represents PAN-AP, Mr. Arnold Padilla from PAN-AP. And after that, Dr. Narasimha Reddy will speak. Each one of them will speak 20 to 25 minutes time, and we will have clarifications and any comments later. This is the system we follow, and so there is a note. So chart box is there. You can post any questions and clarifications in the chat, and then idea is at the end of the day we will have a summit. We'll have a kind of a note statement that we will release for your consent and support to give our voices as Indian voice on these systems. When we talk about these things, it is not just only talk about globally, and we have to see that how our rootedness should expose the problems to the governments and also the systems that are operating globally to know that people will not allow this kind of things. So it is in this context. I invite Vandana Siva. In India and also globally, she doesn't require any introduction. But as a formality, I'll just bring that she is the founder of Navadanya. You know by me what does it mean by Navadanya. And as she is an Indian scholar, environmental activist, and also food sovereignty advocate, globally well-known person. She did a lot of writings, particularly like ecofeminism, anti-globalization. She's the author of it, and many other books she has written. And we are really privileged to have her presentation today. I request Madam Vandana Siva to give the presentation.
So thank you, Chennaya. Thank you, Narasimha. Thank you to all who have gathered for this People's Summit, People's Food Summit. let me just give you a little background of why the current proposed food summit in New York needs to be challenged. First, it's the wrong summit. It's not on food. And I'll tell you why it's not on food. Second, it's in the wrong place. All food summits historically have been held in Rome, where the Food and Agriculture Organization is, and the Food and Agriculture Organization is a United Nations body that is one country, one vote, a tiny African country. In its voting power has as much power as the US led by agribusiness. And the third reason why the summit is wrong, it has been hijacked by Bill Gates, it's been hijacked by the corporations. The lady who heads Bill Gates' program for the Alliance for the Green Revolution in Africa, Agnes, has been appointed as the lead for the summit. And the one country, one vote process has disappeared. The civil society mechanism that was at the heart of the Rome-based food summits has disappeared, and the corporate-led agenda has taken over at a time where civil society-led initiatives were becoming the official position in the FAO. First, my work, which began for agriculture, I started in 1984 and wrote the book called The Violence of the Green Revolution because of what was happening in Punjab and the farmers' protests, as well as the disaster in the city of Bhopal caused by Union Carbide, which since then has been bought by Dow, which has merged with DuPont, which have miraculously genetically modified into Corteva. And they have amazing ads in BBC of how they're going to change agriculture. And they'll show one small farmer, and then they'll also show high-tech drone agriculture. And they want to create a confusion in people's minds about the future of agriculture. So the FAO has recognized something we all know. Our agriculture minister, I want to just look for this book because it's too important. So, you know, we had an agriculture minister, no, we had a prime minister who was a farmer, but he was also an agricultural economist. And his name was Chaudhry Charan Singh. And I had been given his book way back, a book on agricultural economics. And this is what Charan Singh wrote. Agriculture being a life process, that's part of what the new food summit is forgetting, that this is about life, not about money, not about profits, not about expanding markets. It says, agriculture being a life process, in actual practice, under given conditions, yields per acre decline as size of the farm increases. The above results are well nigh universal. Output per acre of investment is highest on small farms than on large farms. Thus, if a crowded capital scarce country like India has a choice between a single 100-acre farm and 40 2.5-acre farms, the capital cost to the national economy will be less if the country chooses the small farms. Now, the FAO every year repeatedly brings out data that 80% of the food we eat now is grown on small farms that use only 20 to 25% of the land. 75% of the land used by industrial agriculture is giving only 20% of the food, and that too is not worthy of being called food because it is nutritionally empty, it is full of toxics, it's making everyone sick. This is the scientific evidence available to us. What is the Gates, CropLife, Poison Cartel, non-food summit, anti-food summit proposing? More big farms. Bill Gates is today the largest landlord in America. People still think of him as a nerd. I have a book called Oneness versus 1%, which I wrote when I watched Gates becoming more powerful than governments at the climate summit in 2015. People don't realize he never invented any software. All the patents he has are like the piracy patents on neem, on basmati, on wheat, on all our seeds. A poison-making company can't create a seed. No human being creates a seed. We evolve seed, we breed seed. So the idea of inventing the seed, and that too through poisons, is such an amazing lie told to the world. And it is that lie I did not accept. And that's why I started Navdanya, which means 9 seeds, which means diversity. And more and more work is showing that the more diversity you have, the more food you grow, which is another reason why more small farms are more productive, because on small farms, you can intensify biodiversity. The larger you become, you have to intensify chemicals and fossil fuels. So the more you increase in size, the more the anti-life inputs have to become. And if you measure the true productivity of land, it must go down, because anti-life inputs will kill life. Food is life. The more biodiversity there is, the more food there is. The less biodiversity and less life there is, the less food there is, not just for humans, but for the soil organisms, for the birds, the butterflies, the pollinators, etc. I won't go into the agroecology side of it, but the second aspect of the FAO has been that they recognize agroecology as the scientific principle of agriculture. So this is where, so small farms produce more, agroecology is the scientific principle. This is where Gates and the poison cartel hijacked the food summit to repeat the old lies and grab larger markets. Agriculture, unfortunately, is not like a digital technology. Agriculture is how humanity has evolved on this planet. Australia, 60,000 years, India, 10,000 years, China, 10,000 years, Amazon, 10,000. That's how long we've been farming. We are agroecology experts. And there are brilliant books written on India to show how sophisticated our farming systems have been. Albert Howard was sent to India to study, to create the first agriculture institute, the Pusa Institute. He was sent in 1905. He arrived and found the fields are fertile. There are lots of insects, but no pests. And he said, I'm going to make the peasant and the peasant my professor. That's a scientist. And then he wrote his book called An Agricultural Testament. For any of you want to understand Indian agriculture or ecological agriculture, please read Agricultural Testament by Howard. And he recognized 2 principles: diversity, we grow food in diversity, and we follow the recycling law, the law of return. Even biodynamics, Steiner, where did he pick it up from? India, through the Theosophical Association. So many of the alternatives to ecological agriculture were born in India. And this is the agriculture, that's stage 1 of our agriculture. Stage 2 is colonization. The British colonization. Before that, we might have had colonization of all kinds, but our agriculture was never touched. Our systems of farming were never touched. Our systems of land tenure were never touched. It stayed permanent. The 3 things that the British did was, first, with one stroke of a pen, change land title. They made themselves the owners of India, owners of the soil of India, and then appointed these people called zamindars who would collect rents, which was as high as half of the produce to be paid in cash. The film Lagan has a taste of what this meant. $45 trillion were harvested from India by the British, leaving the farmers in starvation. 45 trillion shifted, for about 40 to 60 million people died. The last big famine was 1942. It was a big trigger that accelerated our freedom movement. And our freedom movement which, already in 1917, the Champaran Satyagraha, 1930, the Salt Satyagraha, it has kept growing. But 1942 was the year we said, quit India. Quit India Day, 9th August. We should tell the poison cartel, time for you to quit India. You have no place in our fields. You have no place in our farms. So we did a lot of changes and decolonized our agriculture. And I was very fortunate to have known so many of the people, no, not personally, my parents did, but their books were all over our home. And when I wrote the Green Revolution book, I referred to this. People like K.M. Munshi, who created Van Mahotsav. We are living in that week of Van Mahotsav, the tree planting festival of India. He said, all we have to do is repair the cycles. Colonialism destroyed the cycle of nutrition, cycle of water. We repair it, everything will be fine. What is good farming? Repairing the cycles. The IAS officers used to be taught composting. The IAS officers in India used to be taught composting. That's how important all this became. We got rid of zamindari, did land reform, put land ceilings, realized the small farmers are more efficient. And that's why India is a land of small farmers. We created an Essential Commodities Act to never allow famine so that no trader could hoard and speculate on food. The Essential Commodity Act is one of the acts that being knocked out. The people call it the 2020 new farm laws. They should be called the old colonial laws, the return of the colonial laws that were brought again. The attempt was made in 91, and I'll come to that quickly. So we should never talk about these as new farm laws. We stop that reference because there's nothing new about them. They were framed in 1991. They are a repeat of what the British did. Food first was the center of our policy, and self-reliance in food. That is food sovereignty. I want to share with you a quote at the time of independence from Gandhi, who said, the first lesson, this was on 10th of June, 1947, the first lesson we must learn is of self-help and self-reliance. Atmanirbharta is the big word. Atmanirbharta is what a food sovereign policy is all about. If we assimilate this lesson, we shall at once free ourselves from disastrous dependence upon foreign countries and ultimate bankruptcy. And this is, and this issue of bankruptcy, I've just been doing a lot of training sessions with Sri Lanka, which for the same reason today has declared itself pesticide-free, chemical-free, organic country, the first country in the world to say, we will go organic. This is not said in arrogance, but as a matter of fact. We're not a small place dependent on our food supply from outside. We are a subcontinent. At that time, 400 million. Now we are 1.36 billion. We are a country of mighty rivers and a rich variety of agricultural land with inexhaustible cattle wealth, all made to disappear. Sadly, the cattle wealth has gone. Our country, if it had not been neglected during the past few centuries, should not today be providing itself with sufficient food, but also be playing a useful role in supplying the whole world. The food insecurity was really a contribution of the colonial rule. And so here we were building food sovereignty. And then the colonizers came back with the Green Revolution. In the first stages, they never said feeding the world. They only said selling chemicals. We've got to sell the chemicals. What were the chemicals? War chemicals. Chemical fertilizers, same process that makes explosives and ammunition. Synthetic pesticides derived from the same processes that killed people in the gas chambers of Hitler. And that's why I named this group of companies that calls themselves Crop Life. I call themselves the poison cartel. They do nothing. They know nothing about crops. They know nothing about life. They only know how to make chemicals to kill. And that's why the Food Summit, joining with them, with all the information we have, with all the amazing movements we have built in the last 50 years, is not just a violation of the UN system and its integrity of one country, one vote. It is a violation of food democracy. It's a violation of food sovereignty. And that's why I am so glad you're holding this dialogue, this People Summit. Because we have Japanese friends here, let me just share a little part of the story on the Green Revolution. It's in my book, The Violence of the Green Revolution. So they applied chemicals. The main job of the Green Revolution was to sell chemicals, leftover war chemicals. And because we grew multi-purpose plants, we bred for food for soil, food for animals, food for humans. We grew tall varieties of rice and tall varieties of wheat and tall varieties of corn and tall varieties of sorghum and tall varieties of pearl millet. We privileged large biomass production because we had to feed everyone. But the problem is when you apply chemical fertilizers, it weakens the cell wall, so the tall varieties would lodge. I call this the satyagraha of the plant. They knew long ago that chemicals should not be in agriculture. So Borlaug, who was given the Nobel Peace Prize for his work on the Green Revolution in India, and the myth of the Green Revolution is sold again and again and again, they couldn't deal with these plants lodging. So he was given the job of changing the plant so that the chemicals could be applied. Now, again, just like Monsanto doesn't make a seed, Borlaug was a military researcher. Borlaug had worked for DuPont Defense Lab, that same Corteva. And because the US military had stolen a lot of seeds, including a dwarf variety of wheat from Japan during the war called Norin. This dwarf variety was bred and was made an invention of Borlaug rather than a biopiracy of the war times. And this was introduced as a miracle wheat. It produced less, but because the calculus was in the hands of these same people, they said high yielding. My entire book on the Green Revolution and my entire work since '84 has been to show how low yielding chemical monocultures are and how high yielding, biodiverse intensive organic systems are. We've got about 10 reports on this. We could feed 2 times India's population. We protected our own seeds. We grow biodiversity intensive, got rid of the chemicals, protected our small farms, created local markets. We anyway feed 80% of the food is from small farms. Why can't we start imagining that 100% of the food will only come from small farms, will only come from local regions? Biodiverse, small, organic, local. That is the future that will protect the planet and will protect the farmers and will protect people's health. The next step was globalization, where the Green Revolution was maintained, and on it was added GMOs, and on it was added global trade, and on it was added fake safety. And on each of these, let me tell you quickly. So Monsanto wrote the intellectual property laws. Cargill, the biggest grain trader, wrote the agriculture agreement. And Pepsi, the junk food seller, wrote, with Coca-Cola and Nestle, wrote the sanitary and phytosanitary agreement. Now, just like they can cook up low-yielding systems and make them high-yielding, they can cook up unsafe systems and make them safe, and make safe systems and declare them unsafe. How did that work? They just rewrite. We had a prevention for food adulteration law. They changed it to a food safety standard law, which the corporations wrote. And how do I know that the corporations wrote it? Because we were fighting Coca-Cola. We had shut the plant down in Pachimada. There was a case, the case came all the way to Supreme Court. And while our lawyer was arguing, Coca-Cola lawyer puts out papers and says, you cannot have this trial under the Prevention for Food Adulteration Act because the laws are changing. And the judge said, you know, our laws are changing in India and we don't. Sure enough, the Food Safety Authority came, but it came exactly on the time when the nuclear debate was taking place. And I called up all my friends in Parliament and said they're going to vote this law. You're saying we're so busy defeating the nuclear agreement with the US. There's no way we can study this law and even dedicate ourselves. So it came through hiding behind the nuclear deal. And what does it say? It basically says corporations don't have to regulate, but the small artisanal processor will not just be regulated, but will be criminalized. 98, they shut down 5 million cold press oil mills. And that's when the women called me and said, bring our mustard back. Our children can't eat food cooked in soya bean. I worked with Kerala farmers who were being forced to dump their coconuts. 10 rupees a nut dropped to 2 rupees a nut. And the flooding with GMO soya started. 75% of people of India are now eating GMO soya. Why is it cheap? Because the Americans subsidize it and our government subsidizes it. Why is palm oil cheap? Because the Malaysians and the Indonesians subsidize it and our government subsidize it. So bad food looks cheap, but it is what's making people sick. The biggest bill, just talk, I hope all of you who are hosting the summit will go back to the people and ask, what is your food bill? And what is your health bill? And most chronic diseases, we have about 4 books on how most chronic diseases are related to bad food. Chemical food, ultra-processed food. 75% chronic diseases. And of course, 75% of the destruction of the planet. So we know all this. And just as there have been movements growing against pesticide, movements growing for agroecology, for organic farming, for biodynamic farming, for permaculture, for seed saving, when I started, we were among the very few. Today, seed saving has exploded all over the world. The local food issue is becoming more conspicuous now because during COVID, people realize what you eat makes a difference to your health. And organic farming has grown, gardens have grown, and we need to grow this more. We also have the reintroduction, the 1991 structural adjustment of neoliberalism had a set of conditionalities. Among them were the 3 laws that have just been implemented. Remove the Essential Commodities Act, remove the regulations of the APMC, and let it be free-floating markets and trading, and allow contract farming, get rid of all restrictions. Now, the point is they've tried contract farming, but it has repeatedly failed. When the Punjab disaster had happened, Pepsi first entered India through Punjab. And they came in with this ad, which I want to show you. This was the ad they were putting up then. Punjab has the promise of 100 years of spring. They have a festival called Baisakhi. They came in with tomatoes and potatoes. Potatoes for potato chips, tomatoes for ketchup. Did it work? No, totally failed. Absolutely wiped out. If you notice, even today, farmers growing potato and tomato aren't able to sell their crops. Our calculations show for a 20 rupee package of chips, which makes you sick, gives you diabetes, gives you obesity, the farmer receives, of the 20 rupees, the farmer gets 0.04%, 0.04%. The return to the farmer in this globalized chain is between 1 to 4% of gross income. And then you add the fact that Pepsi sells the seed, Pepsi sells the pesticide, Pepsi sells the fertilizer, Pepsi charges you for irrigation. We're probably talking about something like minus 200%. We're talking about a negative genocidal economy, which is why our farmers are rising and protesting. They know this. Many of them, their fathers marched with me, their fathers walked with me, Rakesh Tiket's dad, Mahinder Singh Tiket was at every rally, the Bangalore rally, the Delhi rally, to say, tell the government, don't sign GATT, don't sign WTO. So we basically know what food sovereignty is. Having seed sovereignty, it's having being free to grow your own food without chemicals. It is having your markets. And therefore it means local, more local markets, not the global commodity market. And it means good food that doesn't make you sick. And it means processing your food in ways that are healthy and doesn't make you sick with the ultra-processed food. All this is scientifically established. Will those who got used to making super profits give up in a hurry? No, they won't. They want bigger markets. And because this is the lesser known part, let me just spend a tiny bit of time to explain to you what the Food Summit really is. The Food Summit is to rewrite the definition of food, of agriculture, to change who makes decisions about these issues. Will you decide what you eat, or will the Bill Gates and the Silicon Valley decide what you eat? Will farmers decide what they grow, or will the poison cartel decide what you grow? So let me just mention to you very briefly, and it's in this book of mine called Oneness versus 1%. The details were already there. You know, Gates was talking about one agriculture, Gates Act 1, everywhere, same few commodities, same agriculture. And it is the plans have evolved faster and further. Digital agriculture is already on the agenda. But can a digital agriculture create food? No, it doesn't. What digital agriculture does is mine data of the farmers. And the Andhra Pradesh initiative includes a very, very big component of Bill Gates mining farmers' data. In fact, if the new government hadn't shut down a whole seed park, they would have control of the seed. In any case, Gates controls the ICRISAT. I have done a piece called Reclaim the Seed. In this year, Gates has taken over all the consultative group of international agricultural research agencies. He finances them, he controls it. So all our seeds are with him. So what is digital agriculture? Steal the data of farmers. Does a Bill Gates know how to farm? No. Does a Microsoft know how to farm? No, they know nothing. But they track the farmer, and Gates was placing in farmers' homes in Andhra Pradesh people to document every step of the occupation. There's something called digital green that gets hired by the Andhra Pradesh government to do all this data theft. And please, in Andhra Pradesh, file a case on data theft of the farmers through this digital green. Actual seeds being stolen. We need a campaign that ICRISAT has to give all the seeds back to farmers. We'll talk about it separately, Narsiman, as a follow-up action. Digital agriculture means earlier the Monsantos pirated our seeds through genetic engineering. Now, Gates piracies it through digital genomic reading. One of the agendas of the Food Summit is to get rid of the international laws, the Convention on Biological Diversity, the Seed Treaty of the FAO, just get rid of them and bypass them through digital genomic maps. Very serious issue. I've been briefing countries on this, and it is basically making illegal actions legal. But the worst of it is lab food and fake food. Bill Gates and the Silicon Valley are the biggest financiers of lab-made food. They say, why should people eat real food? And just like they made our coconut and mustard look dangerous for our health and forced us to eat GMO soya, it will take nothing for them to rewrite the rules, rewrite nutrition, and say only lab food is safe and real food that comes from your farm is dangerous. Because when they write the rules, they will write the rules for their market. Now, I call this fake food, and please read the report from Navdanya called Gates to a Global Empire. We have a whole chapter on fake food. 14 patents on Impossible Burger, 14 patents. Every element, so you make a fake food with about 60 ingredients, genetically modified, artificial, synthetic biology, and every one of them has 5 or 6 patents associated with it. And if we defended the seed against patenting, it is now to defend our real food and prevent the patenting of food. There's been huge attacks on milk. Our women have one cow which they love like their own mother. And they take images of factory farms of America. Farm cruelty. No, we don't have factory farms. One woman, one cow, 100 million lives protected. This fraud on real food is the next battle on food. And this is part of the agenda they're going to launch at the Food Summit. The final issue is, why do they need the crop life? Why do they need the big giants? Because the giants have said, as fake food will grow, bigger and bigger monocultures must grow to supply them, raw material. So food will disappear. It'll now be raw materials of proteins, carbohydrates, etc., to be assembled in the labs. So they're looking at ultra processing to make more profits at a time where we need fresh food, local food, biodiverse food. The reason your summits, people summits are important is food will decide whether humans survive or not. Food will decide whether the planet regenerates or not. Food will decide if farmers live or not, and food will decide if we'll be healthy or we'll be sick. Thank you.
Thank you very much, ma'am, for your great presentation, which really exposed the current paradigm of agriculture, food system, and then policies that are imposed on the people, particularly the people who deserve the food, healthy food, is made to hunger and then pollute their stomachs. So it is a great opportunity for all of us. Your presentation exposes saying that where is the food sovereignty from the ever since this green revolution is introduced to today green revolution, coming up with a lot of national, international bodies really working against the farming community and also the systems that are working in the country from Gates. From those days, we had like American companies establishing ERI, and today we should see that the Gates and the same companies coming up again and again, coming up and devastating, creating devastations in our life with the support taken from the so-called UN bodies, which are become like brokers for these corporates. Very bad word I had to use because I don't see any other worse word can be used. So these brokers are becoming really puppets and then push the convincing efforts to these economies, particularly in our own country. We bring back our colonial laws as a recent laws. It is a very clearly you brought out that these colonial laws are really making all the systems that are there to protect our food has been going to be ruined. So your presentation is greatly helpful to everybody, and I hope this system of operation should be stopped only by small peasants, farmers, agriculture workers, and then people depend on food by natural resources like Adivasis, fisher folk, and all other people depend on land and livelihood and informal workers. So many big lists. So thanks a lot very much. Now I request Arnold Padilla is from PAN-AP, and in the place of Sarojini Rangam, he has come, and he is the Food Sovereignty Program Coordinator of Pesticide Action Network Asia Pacific, based in Malaysia. He has been activist for the last 25 years as a writer, researcher, campaigner on various people's issues in Philippines and in the region. He is currently based in Philippines. So before he starts, he will just give a 1 minute video presentation, which gives him, which gives us the what is the happening around. Arnold, please open your mic.
I can't promise to be as engaging as Dr. Shiva, but I hope that this video to introduce my topic will help my input be as engaging, hopefully. So this video is on the Global People's Summit campaign that PAN-AP and the Asian Peasant Coalition, which is also organizing this meeting, are part of the co-organizers. I prepared a short PowerPoint presentation to share with you this campaign called the Global People's Summit for Just, Equitable, Healthy, and Sustainable Food Systems. So it will be divided into two major parts. The first part is the UN food systems and corporate control, which actually Dr. Shiva has already well articulated, no, the different issues, but just to revisit some of them again. And the other part is on the Global People's Summit, no, as a counter to the UN food system. Yeah, I got muted again. So the Global People's Summit as a counter to the UN Food System Summit, or the FSS, no, mainly because of the reason, no, in input number one, the corporate control. So just to give you a brief background, in 2019, the UN Secretary General, Antonio Guterres, he announced, no, that he will convene a food system summit in September this year as part of the decade of action to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals by 2030. The decade of action is a UN-wide level effort to accelerate the achievement of the targets set in the SDGs, no? Because we only have about 9 years now, no, remaining to achieve the targets by 2030. And through the Food System Summit, the Attorney General said, no, they will launch bold new actions to deliver progress on all 17 Sustainable Development Goals, each of which relies to some degree on healthier, more sustainable, and equitable food systems, which is actually correct, because food, no, goes a long way in addressing not just hunger and poverty, but really many of the Sustainable Development Goals that were identified by the UN. And the FSS was pushed by UN agencies, including the Food and Agriculture Organization, or the FAO, the International Fund on Agricultural Development, or IFAD, and the World Food Program, which is okay. They are the UN agencies in food and agriculture. But another major player is actually added to that equation, and that's the World Economic Forum, which is not a UN agency. The WEF, as we know, is a global body mainly controlled by corporations to influence or shape public sector agenda and policies on issues of economic, political, social, and environmental concerns. And that's where the big problem lies. That's why we are saying that actually, as Dr. Shiva said, the Food System Summit of the UN is actually being driven but not by the people's agenda on food and agriculture, but by the agenda of big monopoly corporations in food and agriculture. And how was the WEF able to do this? Having access to the UN and setting its agenda. If you recall, in 2019, the United Nations and the World Economic Forum forged a strategic partnership. And this partnership basically allowed the transnational corporations that are behind the WEF to have special or favored access to the UN system. And that partnership underlines the role of monopoly corporate interests in setting the agenda of the UN, including on the Food System Summit. And specifically, what the WEF is pushing is what its so-called New Vision for Agriculture agenda, which states that achieving the goals of food security and environmental sustainability requires a transformation of agriculture by leveraging market-based approaches. And in fact, this market-based approaches, this NBA New Vision for Agriculture agenda, is actually already being felt in India. I read somewhere an article saying that the three farm laws are actually the product of a lobbying by corporate interests through the WEF Council in India. So that's what it means, when it says that it will transform agriculture through market-based approaches and all the problems that accompany that approach to food systems transformation. And then another indicator, as also mentioned earlier, is the appointment of a point person for the Food System Summit, to oversee the preparations and facilitate the process. The appointed point person for the Food System Summit is the same point person appointed by monopoly corporations for the promotion of chemical intensive and destructive corporate agriculture. We are referring to Agnes Kalibata, who is the president of the Alliance for a Green Revolution in Africa. And another set of evidence that we see when we say that why we are saying why the Food System Summit is mainly being pushed by the corporate agenda is when you look at its action tracks. Now, action tracks are they are mechanisms instituted by the Food System Summit where they organize discussions around action tracks divided into thematic issues. And in these discussions attended by civil society, government, multilateral institutions, UN agencies, and of course, big business. So that this is where they discuss the proposals, the particular proposals setting the overall direction that the food systems transformation will take. And if you look at the action tracks, there are 5 action tracks, we can clearly see the role, the firm control of corporations in the discussions in the FSS. So when you talk about action track 1, for example, which discusses access to safe and nutritious food, it is being chaired by the Global Alliance for Improved Nutrition, or GAIN. It is a Swiss-based foundation that was founded by Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. It was financed by the USAID and currently being financed by agrochemical giants like the BASF. So we know where the loyalty lies for GAIN. And it talks about access to safe and nutritious food, which is ironic. Then you look at action track number 2, which talks about shifting to sustainable consumption patterns. It is being chaired or led by the EAT Foundation, which was co-founded by big pharma, big pharmaceutical firms, and investors as well in the fossil fuel and coal industries. And EAT as a foundation actively partners with big tech, Google. Dr. Shiva talked about earlier, the agenda in digital farming and why these big tech giants are very much invested and interested in food and agriculture. It actively partners with big ag like Cargill, which is the biggest agribusiness company in the world. The poison cartel, as termed by Dr. Shiva, the cartel of the big agrochemical giants, Syngenta, BASF, Bayer, and the others, and big food, like Nestle and Coke, etc. And these partnerships focus on genetic engineering of food and other so-called business solutions for food systems transformation. If you look at action tracks 3 on boosting nature positive production, and 5, which talks about building resilience to vulnerabilities, shocks, and stress, in key leadership is the CGIAR, the Consultative Group on International Agricultural Research. In particular, its research program on water, land, and ecosystem in Action Track 3, and its research program on climate change, agriculture, and food security in Action Track 5. CGIAR is mainly funded by the Gates Foundation. If I remember it correctly, more than $700 million in the past 20 years of CGIAR funding come from the Gates Foundation alone. And through that, Gates is able to advance its agenda of consolidating control Dr. Shiva talked about the AG1, the consolidation of global agricultural research to accelerate. The idea is through that consolidation, they will be able to further accelerate genetic engineering development and use, and then also further monopolize seed resources. And then lastly, if you look at action track 4 on advancing equitable livelihoods, it is being led by CARE USA, which describes itself as an international humanitarian organization, but is actually a strategic partner of Cargill for more than 60 years now, and they've been partnering for many rural development initiatives worth hundreds of millions of dollars in the past many years. And Cargill, as we all know, is one of the biggest farm owners in the world. It has more than around $3 billion dollars in global farmland assets, including large-scale plantations. So these are the institutions that are backed, funded, established by big corporate interests, and they are the ones leading the discussions in the FSS, the discussions in the action tracks on where our food systems will go, no, in many years to come, no, if they will be successful and if we will not stop them. So just to sum up, because of the things I described, you know, the presence of big corporate interests, you know, in the FSS, we see that the okay, getting distracted by, okay. So we see that the emerging overall direction of discussions in the Food System Summit has been on the promotion of tech fixes. So digital farming or precision agriculture, genetic engineering and others, and market-based approaches, meaning the same old discredited neoliberal policies of liberalization, deregulation, and privatization to address hunger and poverty, the exact same agenda of the World Economic Forum, of the agribusiness giants, of Bill Gates and others, while they are ignoring the structural issues of hunger and poverty like rural landlessness, especially here in our region, that is very widespread, and the issue of neo-colonialism and how colonialism has restructured our food and agriculture to serve not the needs of our communities, not our development needs, but the needs of the international market, no? The needs of the industrial countries. So that's where the FSS is heading. And that is why we are organizing this Global People Summit, or the GPS, as we call it. The UNFSS will prove, to us, as we look at how the FSS is being organized and who are the major players behind it, that Food System Summit of the UN will prove to be not just incapable of truly transforming our global food systems, but would in fact also further legitimize and advance the corporate agenda at the expense of the people and planet. So the GPS is our counter to that. It's the people's counter to the corporate agenda, to expose and impose the corporate agenda. Through the GPS, we hope to mobilize the global people's movement to advance the people's agenda for genuine and progressive food systems transformation. So right now, the Global People's Summit is being led by an organizing committee composed currently of 18 global and regional networks, coalitions, alliances, and movements, including my office, my organization, Pan Asia Pacific, the Asian Peasant Coalition, which is organizing this meeting and chaired by Chenaya. And also in the organizing committee are the People's Coalition on Food Sovereignty, the Arab Group for the Protection of Nature, the Arab People for FoodSob. We have the Eastern and Southern Africa Small Scale Farmers Forum, or ESAF. We have indigenous peoples, through the Indigenous Peoples Movement for self-determination and liberation. We have agricultural workers through the Coalition of Agricultural Workers International, rural women represented by the Asian Rural Women's Coalition. We have the Global Forest Coalition, the People Over Profit, a campaign network, the People's Research Network, the Asia Pacific Research Network, or APRN. We have Ibon International, the Asia Pacific Forum on Women, Land and Development. We have this campaign network on genetic engineering, specifically golden rice, the Stop Golden Rice Network. Pan North America is also part of the organizing committee. A Growing Culture, a US-based group which specializes in media and communications, also helping us. And we have the youth, of course, which is very important, through the Youth for Food Sovereignty. So these are the groups that are behind the Global People's Summit. So through the GPS, we hope to contribute in further building a global movement that will challenge the monopoly control of TNCs over food and agriculture. And we hope to further strengthen the ongoing campaigns at the national, regional, global levels. No? It's very important to stress that, because it's not as though there are no ongoing campaigns. No? Actually, and in fact, there are many vibrant campaigns on the grounds happening, for the people's food sovereignty, against the monopoly control of corporations over food and agriculture. So we actually want to build on these already very vibrant campaigns on the grounds, at various levels, national up to the global level, against issues of neoliberal globalization, against hazardous TNC technologies that harm the people and planet, such as GE and agrochemicals, and against dubious innovations, such as digitalization of farming, all of which are agenda in the FSS, where the corporations hope to further create more room for them to introduce these innovations, create more markets for them, expand their domination, all at the expense of the people. So what will this People's Summit produce, and how are we going to produce it? So the GPS is a venue where we can harness, consolidate, and promote the concrete policy proposals from different countries, regions, and sectors on how to advance food sovereignty and how to transform the food systems and make it truly just, equitable, healthy, and sustainable. And this process will be facilitated through a series of national and regional events and sectoral and thematic workshops. Actually, this activity, this meeting that we're having now, is one of the activities that the GPS is supporting, to be able to gather all these perspectives from the grassroots, from the communities, and from other sectors on how we should transform the food systems that is anchored on food sovereignty. And all these outputs will feed into a declaration and action plan that will be adopted during the actual Global People's Summit in September. So the GPS will take place in September, because that's when the UN food system will also take place. So it will happen alongside or right before the actual Food System Summit of the UN. So to visualize that process, so you have here the Global People's Summit that will produce the declaration and the action plans that were created, that will be created from the process happening at the different levels. So we have the regional activities. We're planning to organize in Africa, in Asia, and Latin America. The national activities. Right now, we have 18 countries and we hope to add more. One of them is India, like our activity now, but we also have Cambodia, Indonesia, Malaysia, Nepal, Pakistan, and Sri Lanka and Vietnam. In Africa, we have at least 2, Uganda and Zambia. And in Latin America, we're looking at 6 countries that can hopefully can also organize their national activities similar to what we're having right now. And then there's also the thematic perspective, where we hope to get concrete proposals on how to transform our food systems in a truly radical way. So we have thematic discussions on food sob, on right to food, on sustainable consumption, on peasants' rights to land, and on agroecology.
Arnold, please speed up.
Okay, yeah, I'm about to wrap up, yeah. And then also the sectoral workshops, so with the indigenous peoples, with women, agricultural workers, and the landless and youth. So who can join this campaign? Who can join the Global People's Summit? We invite to join the Global People's Summit everyone who share the aspirations for food sovereignty and genuine agrarian reform. Those who believe in land to the tillers, those who reject monopoly control over and the wanton plunder and destruction of our natural resources for corporate profits. We invite everyone who share the vision of a future where it is not the unaccountable, profit-hungry TNCs that are running the show in the FSS that are decisive in determining the direction and priorities of food and agriculture, but the communities of people in an environment of true people's democracy and sovereignty. If you want to learn more about the Global People's Summit and how you can participate and how you can join the different activities, you may visit our campaign website, thepeoplessummit.foodsob.org. And then you can also email the secretariat. So that's through the nolandnolife@panap.net, and also the secretariat at foodsob.org. This is our website. So if you just type peoplesummit.foodsob.org, you will land on this page, and there you can see updates, events, ways how to participate, and how you can reach out to the organizing committee or the secretariat. So I'll end there, Chinaya. Thank you. And if you want to know more about PANAP and our different campaigns aside from the GPS, also please drop by www.panap.net. Thank you.
Thank you, Arnold, for a detailed action plan of GPS as a counter to the corporate-led UN Food Summit. And thanks for exposing how the this industrial corporate-led agriculture has been creating devastations to our nations. And we all know that the corporations and even World Economic Forum World Economic Forum is not for the people's benefit, is not for the people's lives. They are basically for the corporates or for profits. So the corporates which are looting the economies are made responsible to protect the food. How fun it is. So we all know that the United Nations also has been funded by the corporates. As a result, today we get only this kind of systems that operates against the lives of the people and their food security and food sovereignty. So it is the corporations which are meant for profit can only deliver anti-people policies. And these governments has been really, as already Vandana Vaseva has said, that it is no demolition to the democracy, and it is also demolition to the biodiversity of our nations and nature. So which cannot be anymore allowed by the people's organizations. We have to be together and see that how do we really address these issues, not only at global level, it's more so at local level. We all know that in spite of several rounds of land reforms, even today, the landless poor have been cultivating their lands without having titles over that. So as already said, that the digitalization has been made as a tool to really take away the whatever the rights that are there in the hands of the agrarian community, particularly landless poor, Adivasis, Dalits, fisher folk, and not all informal workers who have been access to these natural resources has been pushed away. And these systems, which has been coming up again as a part of food system summit, is much more dangerous, and they're all galvanized together against the people, and people should know that, and the people's organizations like people like all of you to see that how do we all together expose these kind of no exploitations that has been organizing by these corporations, for whom these governments are also working as subservients because of the so-called research projects that they take, and all most of our universities and research bodies are all funded by now these corporations. So they try to talk in tune with these kind of corporations. So it is that kind of system that is happening and operating, and pre-colonial systems are bringing back. So it is our right to see that how do we really defend this kind of, how do we really encounter these things and then defend the rights of the people for their food sovereignty. And now I have I request Dr. Narasimha Reddy. Dr. Narasimha Reddy is not new to the people who have been working in grassroots and also at national level. And Dr. Narasimha Reddy has been a passionate campaigner on environment and development issues. He has contributed to public discourse and public policy changes in the electricity, seed, rice, cotton, sugarcane, sericulture, handloom and textiles, land and water, and other related areas. He built campaigns, advocacy programs, policy change projects. He is an author, writer on different subjects in the regional, national, and international publications. He also guides students on their PhD and other research activities. He very much closely associate with many mass organizations like APVBU and other organizations in the national level, supporting with proper database to sharpen our struggles and strengthen the rights of the people. Yeah. Dr. Narasimha Reddy, please, now your time.
Thank you. I think we all discussed the broad aspects of food systems. I think we'll come back to India. Of course, Dr. Vandana Shiva has brought us what has been happening in the last 30, 40 years. Now, before I begin, I think let us go into again a short critique on the UN Food System Summit. What I found was, among all the literature, there is no straight definition of a food system. What is the food system they are talking about? You'll see UN mentioning that global food supply chains are being broken because of COVID-19. But when you look at other aspects, I can't see what is the definition they are giving to a food system. Are they talking of a international food system, or they're talking about corporate food system? So there is no straight definition. Whenever you say, when you put that in your headline, I would expect them to define that, and that's not done. And second, I think when they are trying to link the food system with the SDGs, Sustainable Development Goals, I think they are trying to, it's an act of legitimization, I feel, because Sustainable Development Goals talk of hunger, prevention of hunger, reduction in poverty. The 1, 2, 3, 4 basically talk about this, and then 4, 5, 6, 7 talk about ecology and environment, water. So when they are trying to link the current food system, I think I'm just looking at whatever current food system they want to link it with the SDGs. I think it's an act of legitimization, because as Vandana Shivaji has explained clearly, the current food system is exploitative and extractive. So in the last 30 years, we have seen how environmental systems have broken down, biodiversity has lost all over the world, not only in India. In India, we'll come to that, but we have seen that all over the world. And recently I've seen, Congo River in, Africa, big river, and there's no fish in that river. And also Lake Tanganyika in Africa again. So those biodiverse systems have been destroyed by this system, and then they are talking about linking this system with the SDGs. Now, third, you can see there is a lot of jargon. I can see, one jargon you can see is PEM, protein, energy, malnutrition. So whatever that means, there are a number of pages written on that. So basically, again, Dr. Shiva has mentioned, these have become the raw materials for the neo-colonial exploitative system and smart proteins. And I was surprised to read that there is a India-Netherlands a smart protein corridor, and the Indian government has granted $600,000 to this project where they want to bring smart proteins. So whatever that means. Fourth, you can see there is no real identification of the root causes. So whenever they are saying, okay, this system has this problem, this UN food system has not fingered any clear root cause. I think that shows that they want to build whatever they want to build on the current system, but not removing it or by destroying or overcoming the current exploitative system. So there is no renunciation in their efforts. That's all the more galling. And if you look at alternative proteins, innovative solutions, I think they don't use the word genetic modification, but you can see it is lingering behind some of these innovative solutions that are being promoted there. So I think all in all, I think UN food system, as rightly said before, it is trying to build uh, new kinds of systems on the same exploitative system currently. And two, I think they are trying to legitimize because they are lost a lot of that legitimization when we look at the impacts. And three, I think it's again a kind of market mechanism. So they want to capture more markets. They want to deepen the markets. I think that's an effort I can see there. Now coming to India, this is just a simplified version. When you are talking of Indian system, it's very diverse and it is very broad. But I'm just simplifying. So you are looking at a private food system of production. So I'm using system because there are interlinkages therein, and then we have public system. But within private. This corporate kind of food system is now growing in the last 10, 15 years. But then there is a large mass base of farmer-led private food production system. And of course, in the public system, you are looking at subsidies which are there. And now there is a lot of discussion on whether subsidies should be continued or not in the neoliberal framework. So this is a simplified version. I just thought, so I'll discuss some of the aspects of this. Um, Now Indian food production, again, it was under transformation forcibly by public policies since 1964-65. So when Green Revolution was thought to be introduced in 64, I think then Green Revolution 2, when Manmohan Singh was the Prime Minister. So Green Revolution, we should understand that even though they have been trying that, it took roots in India only 25 years after it began, at least only in 85, 80s, only when the water, water scarcity started showing in certain areas, and largely backed by bank subsidies. So banks, they started giving loans, and they said in the loan, if you buy fertilizer, chemical fertilizer, you will get a loan. Or if you buy seed from the market, you will get a loan. So this kind of financialization helped the Green Revolution take roots. Otherwise, I don't think Green Revolution would have come into India, because India had a very vibrant agriculture right then. Green Revolution 2 is also being sought to be introduced in the same way. Now, in the last 5-6 years, we are seeing Niti Aayog and Government of India talking about livestock systems. So they said, okay, agriculture is not income generating even, so we need more and more livestock systems. That means, again, this is a clear path towards what America has been trading. So it is more of an animal-based food production system, which UN food system says is not good. So when we are discussing UN food system summit in India, nowhere this aspect is discussed at all. Now, of course, the fourth aspect which was brought in already, the 3 farm laws. Last year on June 5th, these 3 farm laws have been brought about. And this basically, again, move India towards industrial agriculture, corporate agriculture. And there's a lot of critics written on that. And even today, in the last 6, 7, 8 months, farmers have been protesting against that. We are calling for withdrawal of these farm laws. So overall, Indian food system, what is under change because of
You are not audible.
liberal framework which was brought in 1991 when PV Narasimha was the prime minister. Okay, sorry.
Your audio
Are
is.
you able to hear now?
Yeah, now. Yeah,
Hello.
it's okay now. Yeah, now it is okay. We can hear you now. We can hear you now.
Okay, so in
Yeah.
1991, this reform process, which began with PV Narasimha Rao and Manmohan Singh duo, I think that continued across 30 years. And every stage, every government, irrespective of the party in power, I think they have all been being pushed towards liberalization of Indian agriculture. So basically, it is more of dispossessing people from resources, and I think the ownership is being shifted to corporate companies. So after PV Narasimha Rao, we had briefly BJP government, then again Congress, and again BJP. So this even across the cycles of party change, the continuum of this transformation towards corporate agriculture continued, and these 3 formulas, I think they are the final nail in that process of liberalization, globalization, and privatization. But on the other hand, you can see the distress which has set in Indian agriculture in the last 15 years. So we are seeing suicides, which is just one indicator of the distress. So last 10 years, we have seen more than 3 lakh farmers committing suicide, and many farmers leaving agriculture for labor and employment in urban areas. So we are increasingly seeing a distress in agriculture, and which ironically, the government committee, on doubling farmers' income captures, they say a lot of people are going, and in fact, they say if more people leave agriculture, then India becomes progressive. So again, when you are talking of UN food system, which says the participation of people in food production has to be widened. But here in India, you are looking at trends which are opposite to that. So that's where we thought we need this discussion where the government, the whole discourse, the public policy discourse dictated by these corporates is moving against whatever 5 action tracks this UN food system is talking about. So in that sense, when the UN food system does not take a categorical position against such trends, then it becomes suspect what is the real agenda behind the UN food system. Now, what is happening, food has become a commodity. You can see increasingly in the last 30 years, many foods have become expensive, costly, and almost 60% of Indian population is unable to access them, which they were able to do before. So if you look at, just give you an example of custard apple. Custard apple was a poor man's fruit, or even banana was a poor man's fruit in India, and today it has become a rich man's food. So how did this come about? How did food become a commodity? And increasingly, we are looking at public policies which want to make food a commodity. So this price and the kind of production technologies which are brought in is making food inaccessible. So when you are looking at rice, paddy, paddy became expensive only when government brought in a public subsidy, selling or giving rations, public ration, public distribution system. Only then it is accessible to at least 30–40% of the population. So paddy, which is again a staple food, a staple crop, is increasingly becoming inaccessible, unaffordable. And then, we have only constant foods. So India had a very diverse systems, a diverse food system. But now across India, you can see only 10–15 crops are being talked about. And in fact, the Indian Council for Agriculture Research says in India, there are at least 600 crops. Now, when we are talking of crops, we are talking of agriculture field, but there are foods which are uncultivated foods are also available to Indian population before. So it could be from the surrounding forest, a mini forest or a minor forest, even grassland ecosystem. So all these were uncultivated foods were available for the people. But now, due to environmental degradation and because of this modern food system, now food means we have only either rice or wheat, and that's it, or some vegetable, and now some pulses. So we are talking of a limited number of constant foods. On the other hand, again, we talk of nutrition. So now they are talking of protein corridor, where they want to bring nutrients to the people. But this is all based on, commoditization of the product. Now, food is wasted. That is very clear when you look at Food Corporation of India godowns where they are, all this food is stocked to be distributed to the poor people or hungry people. And a lot of food is also wasted in all the mega cities. So now there are campaigns going on in Delhi, Bombay, and elsewhere how food should not be wasted. So food wastage is now becoming a big, big problem in urban areas, and that is being wasted for most silliest reasons. So I'm not going into that in detail, but this is again a big problem.
Can you
Now,
wrap up in 5 minutes?
just one more slide and I'll wrap it up.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you.
The food stocks are being phased out. Food processing levels are increasing. In India, again, traditional food as primary as possible. So the environmental impact was very low. But now we are increasingly looking at ultra processing, and state governments are now pushing for food processing industries, which are ultra processing industries. So of course, I mentioned all that. So this is my last slide. I just want to give you one example if you want to understand the Indian food system, how it is being transformed against the people. So if you take irrigation, in India across in the last 50, 60 years, irrigation potential is one of the topics of economic planning. So massive capital investments are made on these mega dams. Even today, we are looking at in Telangana or Himachal Pradesh, even Maharashtra. So massive capital investment means they don't have money, so they take loans. Government take loans, and then land is acquired. So land which is already there with the farmers is acquired in the name of irrigation, in the name of canal construction. So this is one kind of dispossession we are looking at, right, in the name of development and providing water. Now, when the command area is created, this command area usually has excess water. Now, this excess, to consume this excess water, governments encourage water guzzling crops. So they talk about paddy, they talk about monocultures. So again, this means high investment. So ultimately, small farmers get dispossessed out of this command area in very different reasons. So when these monocultures come, so again there is a talk of value addition. So to get more returns, to get more margins, there talk of market orientation. That means new seeds are brought in, new hybrids, and now genetic modified seeds are brought in. So new kind of technologies, high mechanization. So ultimately, we talk about whenever we talk about value addition, it is about exports. So when exports orientation comes in, land consolidation is again a immediate agenda behind that. So that means again the land dispossession starts happening. This the entire process I'm talking about, not theoretically, but it has happened and it is happening, and it is going to happen when even river interlinkage program is taken up. So ultimately what happens, water pricing has started. So water pricing becomes then food inaccessibility. As I said, diverse food systems are destroyed, and monoculture systems and expensive foods are brought in. this this brings in a lot of unemployment and nutrition deficiency. So all these current issues which we are talking about, inaccessibility, lack of affordability, income losses, and then environmental degradation. So this combination of impacts can be seen through this one method of development called irrigation in the Indian food system, production, distribution, and consumption. There are many other cycles, so I don't have time for that. But I think what is happening right now in India is we are moving towards what the West has, what West is saying through in UN food system, that they are in, these are the problems, and we need to move away and create a more local food consumption cycles. They are talking of removing animal based production systems, or go for animal welfare systems. These are all there in developing countries. These are all there in traditional agriculture system. So I think when UN food systems, it should have a slogan saying giving power back to the people. I think that when they start with that, I think then it becomes more democratic and participatory. So we need to question this process, because the Indian government is also participating in this UN food system. There are Indian champions, in fact, in Andhra Pradesh, one champion is there. He talks about, again, you know, natural farming or agroecology, but the language he uses is economic language, where he says if we invest $1.7 billion, we'll get back $7 billion. So he's not talking about restoration of local ecological systems and the cultural linkages with those ecological systems, and then the empowering the disempowered communities. So I think India is heading into these UN food systems without discussing what is happening in India, and I hope this webinar will initiate that process as well. So I'll stop here. Thank you, Dr. Chennai.
Thank you, Narasimha Reddy Garu, for the questions, that practical questions that you have put forward to the put forward to in the webinar. Particularly, we all know that how this sustainable development goals, which do not see any kind of root causes of the problems. Even 60, 70 years back, when Green Revolution introduced, they talk about hungry people. And today they are also talking about the hungry people. So then they bring so many, earlier they brought, like health for all, then the next MDGs, and then sustainable, all these sustainable development goals is nothing but self-development goals of the corporate sector for which all these bodies works. And you have very clearly exposed that without talking about the root causes, they want to address the food. But again, bringing the kind of food as a commodity, not as a food. So food is seen as a kind of commodity. When it becomes a commodity, you will see the profit and loss. So this is the kind of things it has been coming up in the kind of developmental projects that we all hearing in the countries are not really development of the people, but displacing the people mercilessly. Particularly agrarian economy, which is the highest number of displacement that is taking place in the name of the development in the countries. Like what you said is the electricity is the best example. The so-called river linking business and the business of the dams and those kind of things, how it has been promoting the market-led agriculture rather than the people's-led agriculture. And as you said rightly, that the power to the masses should be given back so that they will be able to produce their own food, and all other systems can support that kind of system method. And that is the real people's goal, and People's Summit is expected. And we request all of you to be part of this process. And so a kind of statement is already posted in a link posted in the chat. And then we will definitely link all other these things. And please share these presentations. We will circulate to all of these friends who participated. And please take time, and maybe in a weekday's time, please let us know how do we really take this further. We have actually posted a statement. See that if there are any additions or changes that you want to post, please do that. Now the this floor is open for clarifications and also any sharp comments, not very lengthy because it is already no time is there. So at least let us take 15-20 minutes for the participation. So Arnold, please, Elnard, please open all the charts. Please open everybody's no, yeah. Yeah, so all of you can unmute yourselves when you are talking, and after you are raising question or whatever it is, please mute by yourself, because it is now everybody is open. Please start giving clarifications or more any comments to the panelists, and later no, you can also make brief comments. Yeah. We also posted like no, that global People Summit website. Please copy down that and you can sign in that. Yeah. Any comments? If not, clarifications?
Shania, the statement, the link to the statement, we will post in the chat, right?
It's already, yeah. Link is
Okay.
already posted. Yeah.
Link is already there. Okay.
Yeah. So
I posted it again.
yeah, you have posted again. Yeah. Yes. Any responses?
If I may add, Shania.
Yeah, please.
Yeah. No,
Briefly. In the meantime, yeah.
Yes. No, 2 weeks from now, there will be a major event, no, related to our campaign, because on July 26 to 28, the UN Food System Summit will hold its pre-summit in Rome, no, where they will discuss the proposals. They call it solution clusters, no? And I've looked at some of the clusters, and digital farming is very high on the agenda, and all the things that we fear that will be pushed forward by the FSS. So the GPS is planning a series of activities, including a rally in Rome, coordinated activities in the different countries to highlight our demands in relation to food systems. No? So if you will visit the website, you will get these updates. No? And if you can just put your email addresses also in the chat, perhaps we can include you, no, in the mailing list that we have. Thank you.
Yeah. So any other additions by the panelists?
No, someone has raised a hand. I think Paragudiyappa or someone.
Oh, Padagodiappa. Please, Padagodiappa, you can talk. Matadu. Padagodiappa. No, he's not there.
Meanwhile, there is a question for Arnold in the chat. Maybe you can check.
Sir, good evening, sir.
Yeah. చెప్పు పడగోడియప్ప మాట్లాడడానికి చెయ్యెత్తినావు. Yeah.
Yeah. So are we going to incorporate climate change and the
Sir.
COVID-19 pandemic?
Hello.
పడగోడియప్ప మాట్లాడు.
Sir.
No, we can't hear you anything.
Kannada.
Oh, Kannada. Okay, you speak in Kannada. Can I ask Comrade Swami to translate? You give the question, then we will see somebody will find. Yeah.
No, let him say it in Kannada.
Yeah. So Comrade Swami is there. He will translate. Please you tell him in Padagodiappa in Kannada that he can talk.
Namaskara, sir.
Any questions?
Namaskara, sir.
Namaskara.
Sir. Sir.
ಏನು ಪ್ರಶ್ನೆ ಇದೆಯಾ?
ಕಟ್ಟಡ ಕಾರ್ಮಿಕರಿಗೆ ಎಲ್ಲ ಸೌಲಭ್ಯಗಳು ಸಿಗೋ ಹಾಗೆ ಈ MGNRG ವರ್ಕ್ ಮಾಡೋಂತ ಲೇಬರ್ಗಳಿಗೆ ಸೌಲಭ್ಯಗಳು ಯಾಕೆ ಸಿಗಲ್ಲ ಸರ್?
ಅದು ಈ ಮೀಟಿಂಗ್ ನಲ್ಲಿ ಕೇಳಿದ್ರೆ ಸರಿ ಇಲ್ಲ.
ಹ್ಞೂ ಸರ್.
ಬೇರೆ ಟೈಮ್ ನಲ್ಲಿ ಅದು ಮಾತಾಡೋಣ. ಸರಿನಾ?
ಓಕೆ ಸರ್.
Okay. Off panel ಮಾಡಿ mute pan. Yeah. So any other, she was not raising the related question. Yeah.
So I think Arnold.
Shania?
Yeah, Arnold, please go ahead.
Yeah, so there's a question in the chat. Are we going to incorporate climate change and the COVID-19 pandemic in the People's Food Summit? Yes. No, actually, it's the whole context. No, even for the UN, no, it's the context, no, the climate crisis, and of course the pandemic that started last year. And for the People's for the Global People's Summit. No, that's also our context, and it cuts across the different themes and sectoral discussions and up to the national discussions. For example, we have discussions on sustainable consumption and production that is in the context of the current climate crisis, and how can we transform our food systems to respond to the climate emergency that we are facing. So these things are included in our discussions in the GPS.
Okay. Yeah. And it is very clear example in India, just adding to Arnold, that the 3 farm laws which has come in the midst of the corona, and also the labor codes that the Indian government, they know that people cannot really raise the voice. But in reality, it has gone the other way around. Despite of all severe problematic thing, people have been in the streets, in the sense that the both UN and also Indian government has coming up very repressive legislations in the context, using this context as is the best time to push some of the Dracula laws. Yeah.
But I think in India, apart from what Global People Summit is going to do, I think they also have their events. I think within India, I think we need to host, or we need to coordinate ourselves so that we can have discussions on these aspects which have been raised here, or which can be added further. So I think Afsar Jafri has raised his hand, so maybe he can respond on that.
No, I have rather I have a question for the panelist.
Okay.
Chennaiya Garu,
Please go ahead.
My question is basically, I mean, it's not that first time the food summit is happening. I mean, it's happening for last so many years. So how this food summit is different from the food summit which is happening for last, maybe I would say 20, 25 years. So this is my simple question.
Okay. Any panelists would like to respond to?
Yeah, I will. Hello, Zafri. I think I touched on it in my opening remarks.
You did, ma'am, but yeah, you did.
Okay, so one, it's a privatized summit, and it is a privatization of the UN. People have been troubled about the fact that the WHO team to investigate the origins of the COVID-19 was headed by the very fellow who was financing the Wuhan lab, does that. That was a privatization of the WHO, and Bill Gates has had the central role. But the privatization of the FAO is for the first time. That's what's special. Second, it's the first time the food summit is happening in America. Yeah. And the third is the entire role of governments and civil society is disintegrated. But I think, in the context of Narasimha's remark, that we do need, Zafri, you worked with me, you know how we stopped the corporate hijack of Indian agriculture again and again and again through unity. And that unity will have to be built again. And I think the capture is so crude, and it is basically using everything we've done. Just yesterday I was debating the European Commission, and they used every word. I said, but that's not what we mean. You are doing the opposite of what we mean. You use our words to flip. That's what basically is happening with the food summit. All the nice language of the SDGs is being turned into this language of limitless destruction, nothing less than limited. So Zafri, take the initiative and join with Chennaiya and join with everyone and call a national summit for basically a new food sovereignty movement, a new freedom movement. Remember, Anna Swarajam Kehte. We talked about food freedom. That's what we've done.
Thanks.
And we've stopped these giants by 30 years, and we shouldn't let them get away with it now.
Yeah.
Can I add?
Yeah, please.
No, apart from what Dr. Shiva has mentioned, I think post COVID-19 pandemic, which even UN Food System mentions in their literature, the global food supply chains have been broken down. So I think they want to recover those food supply chains and then amalgamate with the agenda which goes under the pandemic. So COVID pandemic, which again, the entirely different arena of discussion. But that's one point. But the second point is, I know from our own point of view, when you're looking at this pandemic and futuristic predictions being made about more pandemics coming because of this industrial agriculture or destruction of environment. I think immunity of the people is very, very important. That means their food is very, very important. So they need to control their food. So maybe if we have not challenged the UN food system before, I think this is the time we need to challenge it at a much higher level. I think that's how.
And I want to say just two things in context of what you've said, Narasimhan. If you see, I mean, the presentation, your PowerPoint and the PowerPoint of Arnel was all about how they really want to capture the very language of food. What is food? What is it? And, the smart protein and all of this. I'll be happy to write for the movements a dictionary of this garbage, what these things really mean. But the most important point is they're working through the WHO to extinguish the language of natural immunity, which is where food comes in. So they're actually killing science at its very roots. And I think the other big step that's needed, our farmers were so courageous in spite of the idea that COVID will lock them down. They've been there 7 months. I've been saying this to the Right to Food movement repeatedly. Please do not treat this purely as a farmers' movement. They are talking about feeding you. So if our annadatas aren't there, there will be no food. And the hunger, which is already a crisis, will be even more severe. And, there's big debates on getting food to the people, but no debate on where it'll come from. No debate on who'll grow it. And very rapidly, if you look at how the language is changing, the entire food supply system could literally become the fake food system. And yesterday in my debate with the European officials and some of the corporations, they kept talking about, we're going to green the supply chain. We're going to have hydrogen trucks and electric trucks. I said, no, we want to shut your trucks down. We want local food. So they are really looking for how to build back the supply chains. And we have to build local, and we need a common agenda. We have a strong, fragmented agenda. The farmers are strong, the landless peasant movement is strong, the right to food movement, but each of them is working in silos until they build the links. Once they build the links, this whole system will topple. And this is what we need to do nationally. And I've said this again and again and again. Every fourth farmer is Indian. If the farmers of this country are defeated, agriculture everywhere is defeated. And the farmers know it. That's why they're fighting so hard. And therefore, we must be with them and stand with them. And so thank you for this summit, but our work continues.
Thank you very much. Any other comments? Otherwise, there are no other comments. So let us really see that we have posted two links. One is a statement of India, where we wanted to raise some of the important demands. Please be part of it, and then raise any clarifications, or you want to add anything, please do it. Feel free to do that. And then also join the global people's movement, GPS, so that you can able to be part of the process. Particularly in India, it is not the new that we are starting. All of us are fighting for the rights of the communities that we have been working, And it is the time really, as Vandana Siva said, that it is the time that again we should see that how do we really bring together the movements. And it is we have seen that the workers' movements and the peasant movements in India come together, and this is the way we have to bring together. And we also agriculture workers' movements never been part of. We have our own questions, but we said, let us forget this. Let us fight collectively, come together and expose the present government policies against the total agrarian economy. So this is the way it is coming up nationally, and let us join hands, and so that we strengthen the people's movements and we protect the rights of the people and protect the democracy. And that is the way save our nation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Shania. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks for all panelists, and thanks for everybody for participation. Yeah.